Before the world taught you to strive, to struggle, to push your way through life, as though the universe were an indifferent machine, there was a quieter truth you once knew. A truth spoken only in the spaces between your thoughts. A truth older than memory, older than the first sunrise that painted the newborn sky. There is a hidden switch within you, a subtle shift of consciousness so powerful, so ancient, that the moment you activate it, life stops resisting you. Obstacles dissolve, doors open before you knock. The current of existence, which once seemed to push against you, begins to carry you effortlessly forward. This is no metaphor. It is the forgotten architecture of reality itself. For your life has never worked against you. It has only reflected the frequency you did not know you were transmitting. As you listen to these words, an awakening begins not as a lesson to be learned, but as a remembrance rising from the deepest chambers of your being. You are not here to struggle against the currents of fate. You are here to remember the switch that turns resistance into alignment, survival into flow, and desire into destiny. Before we begin, breathe deeply and whisper within, I am willing to remember. What follows is not instruction, but activation, a return to the truth your soul has carried across lifetimes. Welcome to the Hidden Switch. Let us begin. Chapter 1. The moment life turns toward you. In a quiet village nestled between rolling emerald hills and a river that shimmered like liquid starlight, there lived a man named Rowan, whose life had become a labyrinth of invisible obstacles. Every step he took felt heavy, as though unseen forces pressed against him. Opportunities collapsed before they could bloom. Friendships dissolved like mist at dawn, and his dreams, once vibrant and pulsing with possibility, faded into distant echoes. Rowan believed life was working against him. Each morning, he rose with the quiet dread of someone bracing for the next disappointment, the next silent battle, the next unspoken loss. He walked through his days with the sinking weight of a man convinced the universe had forgotten him. But the universe, as you will soon remember, never forgets. One fateful afternoon, Rowan wandered beyond the village limits, following a rumor of an ancient sage who lived deep within the forest, a hermit said to understand the hidden currents that govern destiny. He wasn't entirely sure why his feet carried him there. Perhaps it was desperation, perhaps intuition, or perhaps it was something older than both, a whisper from his soul, guiding him toward the moment everything would change. The forest greeted him with a profound stillness. Shafts of golden light cut through the canopy, illuminating pathways that seemed to shift like living threads. Time itself felt different. There, slower, deeper, more deliberate. Rowan followed a winding trail until he reached a clearing where an elderly woman sat beside a fire, stirring a pot that released fragrant curls of smoke into the air. She glanced up with eyes so clear they seemed to contain the memory of the stars. I've been expecting you, she said, as though speaking to an old friend. Rowan froze. Expecting me? How could you possibly? The woman raised a gentle hand. Life always leads those who are ready to the threshold of their turning. Her words landed in Rowan's chest with the weight of truth. He sank onto a nearby log, feeling both exposed and strangely safe. The sage continued, You believe life has turned against you. You think the world closes its doors because you are unlucky, unseen, or unworthy. But hear me, life has never denied you. It has only responded to the frequency you did not know you were living. Rowan frowned. I've tried everything, working harder, planning more, hoping better. Nothing changes. Because effort cannot rewrite a vibration, she whispered. Only awareness can. She placed a smooth river stone in his palm. Tell me what you feel. It's just a stone, she smiled. Yet you feel its weight. Yes? Even without effort? Rowan nodded. That is how your energy works, she explained. You carry unconscious beliefs, the way you carry this stone without thinking. but always feeling. Life responds not to what you want, but to what you carry. And you, Rowan, have been carrying the heavy vibration of someone bracing against life, rather than opening to it. A silence bloomed between them. Then, she added something that would alter the course of his destiny. Life turns toward you the moment you stop assuming it is against you. Those words slipped beneath the armor Rowan had worn for years. Something inside him softened a tiny but profound relaxation, like the loosening of a fist he didn't know he was clenching. The sage continued, her voice steady and ancient. There is a hidden switch inside every human being, a subtle shift that requires no force, no effort, no striving. When this switch is activated, life stops matching your resistance and begins matching your openness. Paths appear. Support flows. Synchronicities gather like birds heading for the same horizon. Rowan whispered, "How do I activate it?" "By remembering," she said simply, "that the universe is responding to you, not punishing you. By trading your expectations of struggle for the possibility of ease. By allowing life to meet you rather than fearing it will break you." She gestured toward the river beyond the trees. "Go to the water. Sit by its edge. Tell it 3 things: what you fear, what you desire, and what you are finally ready to stop fighting." Rowan hesitated, but something deeper urged him forward. He walked to the riverbank, knelt beside the shimmering current, and let the truth spill from him. The fears he'd buried, the dreams he still carried, and the exhaustion of pushing against the world. As he spoke, the river seemed to shimmer more brightly, as though acknowledging his surrender. Then something extraordinary happened. The moment Rowan finished speaking, he felt a subtle yet undeniable ripple through his being. It was as if a door he didn't know existed had quietly swung open within him. He stood slowly. The trees looked clearer. The air felt lighter. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel the universe pressing against him. He felt it leaning toward him. This was the moment life stopped resisting him, not because the world had changed, but because he had. The sage's voice drifted from behind him. The moment you stop living against yourself, life stops living against you. Rowan didn't yet understand the depth of this truth, but he felt its warmth settling into him like dawn spreading across a dark horizon. This was his turning. His hidden switch had begun to awaken, and as you listen, yours does too. Chapter 2. The Switch Beneath Awareness. Before the first civilizations carved symbols into stone or whispered prayers into the night, there existed an understanding so profound, so elegantly simple, that it shaped the fabric of reality itself. This understanding lived not in language, but in vibration, the silent hum beneath all things. It is this ancient truth that Chapter 2 unveils. In a bustling port city brimming with merchants, wanderers, and dreamers from distant lands, there lived a young woman named Isla, who was known for her radiant spirit. Yet despite her kindness and effort, life seemed always one step ahead of her. Opportunities slipped through her hands. Relationships faded before they rooted, and success hovered just beyond reach. Why does life seem to flow so easily for some, she often wondered, while I must push against every tide? One evening, while wandering the narrow streets near the harbor, Isla stumbled upon a small stall, adorned with shimmering trinkets and ancient texts. Behind it sat an elderly sailor with a long silver beard, his eyes reflecting the wisdom of oceans, traveled and storms survived. As Isla approached, he lifted a small handcrafted compass and gestured for her to take it. "This," he said, "does not point north." Confused, Isla turned the compass in her hands. The needle quivered but didn't settle. "What does it point to then?" she asked. The old sailor smiled. "To your inner setting, your hidden switch." She frowned. "I don't understand." He motioned for her to sit. Lantern light flickered around them, casting golden halos upon the worn wood of his stall. "Most people believe life pushes them," he said softly. They think circumstances shape their destiny. But the truth is far stranger and far more empowering. Life does not push, it reflects. He tapped the compass. This needle moves according to the vibration you hold beneath your awareness. Isla felt a ripple of curiosity. But I try so hard. I speak positively. I plan. I hope. Trying, he said with a knowing gaze, is not the same as being. He leaned closer. There is a vibration beneath your thoughts, beneath your emotions, beneath even your intentions. A setting so subtle, most never notice it. Yet, this vibrational setting is the master switch of your reality. Isla studied the compass again. How do I find this setting? You do not find it, he said. You feel it. And with that, he told her a story. Years earlier, he had been a captain navigating treacherous seas. No matter how skillfully he steered, storms found him, waves rose against him, and winds turned hostile. It seemed the ocean hated him. But one night, he said, eyes distant with memory, I realized something profound. He placed a hand over his heart. It was not the sea that resisted me. It was the storm I carried inside myself. My hidden setting was one of tension, distrust, and anticipation of hardship. And the ocean, being the mirror that all of life is, simply obeyed my vibration. He paused. The day I shifted that setting, the waters changed. Not because the sea transformed, but because I did. Isla felt something stir deep within her, a recognition she could not name. The sailor continued, This is how the universe responds. It does not hear your words. It does not follow your plans. It feels your setting. And your setting is determined by the vibration beneath your awareness. He handed her the compass again. Close your eyes, he instructed. Hold it, and breathe deeply. Isla obeyed. Now, he said, imagine there is a switch inside you, a faint dimmer of energy. Don't look for it. Don't force it. Simply feel. At first, Isla felt only her heartbeat, then her breath, then something else, a subtle heaviness in her chest, a quiet pressure beneath her ribs, a tension she'd carried for years, but had never consciously noticed. She gasped softly. It feels tight, closed, braced. The sailor nodded. That is your hidden setting, the place from which your life has been responding. Tears welled in Isla's eyes, not from sadness, but from recognition. How do I change it? She whispered. With willingness, he said. Not effort, not force. Simply the willingness to soften what has been clenched for too long. He took her hands and whispered, Life is not against you. It is responding to the part of you that is still against yourself. In that moment, Isla felt something shift, a loosening of the grip she'd never known she was holding, a softening of the internal armor she had built from years of striving and disappointment. The compass needle steadied. It didn't spin wildly. It didn't struggle. It simply pointed clear, calm, aligned. The sailor smiled. There, he said. Your setting has changed. As Isla opened her eyes, the entire harbor seemed different, gentler, brighter, humming with possibility. The world had not transformed. She had. And life, ever responsive, ever faithful to the interior state of consciousness, began to turn toward her. As it will for you. Chapter 3. When reality stops arguing with you. In a sprawling city built upon ancient stone and shimmering glass, where ambition pulsed through every street like a restless river, there lived a woman named Elara. She was known for her fierce determination, the kind that burned so brightly others mistook it for strength. But hidden beneath that glow was a truth Elara could no longer deny. Life seemed to resist her at every turn. No matter how carefully she planned, how hard she worked, or how loudly she affirmed her intentions, reality seemed to push back with equal or greater force. Opportunities dissolved. Projects collapsed. Even simple tasks became tangled in unexpected complications. It felt as though the universe itself had entered a silent argument with her, contradicting her every effort. One evening, after a particularly disheartening day, Elara wandered into a quiet district of the city she had never explored before. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. She followed the warm glow until she reached a narrow alley, lit by lanterns, where a tiny tea house sat tucked between two towering buildings. Its wooden sign read, "The House of Gentle Truths." Drawn by an unexplainable pull, Elara stepped inside. The room was dim, filled with the scent of jasmine and cedar. At a corner table sat an elderly man dressed in robes the color of fading dusk. Without turning, he gestured for her to join him, as though he had been expecting her arrival long before she knew she would come. "You've been wrestling with life," he said softly, still gazing into the candle's flame. "And the harder you push, the louder it pushes back." Elara felt exposed. "Everything feels like a Dundas battle. I do everything right, yet nothing works." The man nodded. "Because life is not arguing with you. You are arguing with life." She blinked. "What does that even mean?" He motioned to the teapot and poured her a cup. "Observe." Steam rose in delicate spirals, warm and effortless. "Do you see the steam resisting the air, fighting for direction, forcing its way upward?" She shook her head. "Of course not." He smiled. "Steam rises because it aligns with its nature. It does not strive. It allows." The man leaned forward, his eyes ancient and clear. "But you have been living as though effort alone could bend the universe. You push, you demand, you attempt to shape reality through tension, and tension is the language life does not speak." Elara lowered her gaze. "Then what language does life speak?" He placed a hand gently over his heart. Alignment. Silence settled like soft dust around them. He continued, "There is a moment, one, that comes quietly, like the soft click of a lock opening when reality stops opposing you. Not because it has changed, but because you have stopped resisting what is. Reality never argues. Only the mind does." Elara felt something in her chest loosen, just slightly. A long-held grip beginning to release. The old man raised his cup. "Let me tell you a story. Once," he said, "there was a young archer named Lyndon, celebrated for his skill but tormented by his own ambition. He practiced tirelessly, determined to perfect every movement. But the more he trained, the worse his aim became. His arrows wavered, shook, and fell short. One day, defeated, Lyndon sought guidance from a reclusive master who lived in a quiet mountain temple. When he arrived, he found the master not with a bow in hand, but sitting serenely beside a still pool of water. "Show me your technique," the master said. Lyndon lifted his bow, drew the string tight with trembling effort, and released. The arrow missed the target entirely. The master nodded sympathetically. "Your arm trembles because your heart argues with reality. You shoot to dominate the target, not to dance with it." He guided Lyndon's hand to rest loosely. "Relax," he whispered. "Not your body, your insistence." Lyndon breathed in. His shoulders softened, his grip loosened. His breath aligned with the moment rather than the outcome. When he released the next arrow, it flew straight and true, landing perfectly in the center. The master smiled. "You see, when you stop arguing with the world stops arguing with you." The old man's story hung in the air between them, shimmering with truth. Elara whispered, "So my struggle, it's not because life is against me?" He shook his head. "Life cannot be against you. It can only mirror you. When your energy is clenched, life reflects that constriction. When your energy opens, life flows." She swallowed. "How do I stop resisting?" He pointed to her teacup. "Start small. Set down your inner fists." Most people do not realize they are bracing against life. They brace with their thoughts, their expectations, their fears. You soften not through action, but through permission. Elara took a slow, deep breath. Something within her dropped into place, a subtle shift. a new space. The man smiled warmly. That is the moment reality begins to turn. Not with thunder, not with fireworks, but with the softening of one breath, one belief, one clenched place inside you. As Elara stepped back into the city streets, everything looked the same. The buildings, the bustling crowds, the shimmering lights. Yet something felt indescribably different. Life no longer felt like an opponent. It felt like a companion she had finally stopped arguing with. And for the first time, life responded not with resistance, but with a gentle, unmistakable ease. Chapter 4. The Frequency of Allowing. If there is a single secret that ancient mystics guarded more fiercely than any other, it is this: the universe does not respond to force, it responds to allowance. This truth is simple, but simple truths are often the hardest for the human mind to embrace. The mind wants control, certainty, strategy, guarantees, but the universe answers to none of these. Instead, it flows toward the open hand, the softened heart, the one who understands that creation is a dance, not a conquest. This chapter begins with the story of a young gardener named Seren. Seren lived in a remote valley where the soil was rich and the sun generous. She had inherited a plot of land from her late grandmother, a revered healer known for cultivating herbs of remarkable potency. The villagers whispered that the secret to her success was not technique, but relationship, a sacred bond with the living intelligence of nature. Determined to honor her grandmother's legacy, Seren threw herself into the work. She studied every method, consulted every book, and forced her garden into rigid schedules. She watered at precise times, fertilized with exact formulas, and trimmed with measured precision. Yet the plants resisted her. They drooped, they yellowed, they refused to thrive. The more she controlled, the worse they became. Frustrated, Seren wept one evening beside the withering garden beds. "I'm doing everything right," she cried to the empty air. "Why won't you grow?" A soft voice behind her responded. "Because you are not allowing them to." Seren turned to find an elderly woman leaning on a carved wooden staff. Her eyes were the deep brown of ancient earth, her presence radiating calm wisdom. "Who are you?" Seren asked, startled. "I am someone your grandmother once taught." The woman smiled. "She told me that the plants grow not from the hands but from the heart." Seren wiped her tears. "I don't understand. I have followed every instruction." The woman knelt and scooped a handful of soil. "And yet you have not listened." "Listened?" Seren echoed. "To the garden," the woman replied. "To life itself. You are trying to force nature to obey your timeline. You demand life bloom on your terms, but life blooms according to its own sacred rhythm." Seren stared at her, confusion giving way to curiosity. "Then, what am I supposed to do?" "Allow," the woman said simply. She guided Seren to sit beside her. "Feel the difference between forcing and allowing." She placed Seren's hand on the earth. "Feel how this soil rises to meet your palm without effort. It supports you without asking. It offers itself without condition. This is the frequency of allowing. It is openness, softness, trust." Seren closed her eyes. For the first time since inheriting the land, she felt the earth beneath her hand, not as something to control, but as something to commune with. The woman continued, "Your grandmother understood this. She approached her garden not with dominance, but with partnership. She didn't impose her will on the plants. She invited them. She listened. She allowed their wisdom to guide hers." A warm breeze brushed Seren's skin, as though nature itself exhaled. The woman leaned closer. "Your fear of failure has become resistance. Your effort has become force. Force blocks the natural flow of life. Allowance opens it." Seren felt something shift inside her, a quiet, profound release. A letting go of the tight grip she had held around her dreams. "When you allow," the woman said, "you align with the universe. When you force, everything tightens, Everything contracts. Life hesitates to enter the clenched spaces. That night, Seren made a vow, not to push, but to allow. She returned to her garden each morning, not with urgency, but with presence. She touched the leaves gently, listened to the breeze, observed the subtle signs the earth revealed. She followed intuition rather than rigid schedules. She softened her fears. She trusted. And slowly, miraculously, the garden responded. Green returned. Buds appeared. The herbs rose with new vitality. The valley whispered in awe. Seren had become a gardener of allowing, but the true garden that had blossomed was within her. Because allowance is not passive, it is powerful. It is not inaction, it is aligned action. It is not surrendering your dreams, it is surrendering your resistance. When you allow, you unlock the path of least resistance, where the universe has been waiting to meet you. Allowing is the frequency of abundance. Allowing is the frequency of flow. Allowing is the frequency where life stops fighting and starts flowering. And just like Seren's garden, your reality blooms the moment you soften enough to let it. Chapter 5. The Law Before All. Laws long before humanity divided sacred knowledge into principles, doctrines, and neatly labeled laws. There existed one truth that every mystic, sage, and enlightened wanderer eventually discovered. It was the truth behind every miracle, every manifestation, every shift in destiny. It was not taught in temples or carved into stone. It was felt like a silent pulse within the fabric of existence. This is the law before all laws. Reality does not respond to what you want. It responds to what you recognize as true. To understand this ancient principle, let us journey to a desert kingdom where dunes shimmered like golden oceans beneath the unblinking sun. In that kingdom lived a scholar named Nahir, revered for his intellect and his mastery of sacred texts. He spent his days studying spiritual laws, meticulously mapping every cosmic principle the universe was said to obey. His chamber walls were lined with scrolls, diagrams, and charts, a lifetime of knowledge gathered in pursuit of one goal: to master reality itself. Yet, despite all his wisdom, Nahir's life remained stagnant. Wealth eluded him. Opportunities dried like water under desert heat. Relationships faltered. His manifestations, no matter how carefully constructed, dissolved before they could take form. Frustrated and exhausted, he traveled to the farthest edge of the kingdom, seeking a legendary mystic said to hold the oldest truth of all. The mystic lived in a cave carved into crimson stone, overlooking an endless horizon of sand. When Nahir approached, the old man sat silently at the entrance, eyes half closed, as though listening to a song only the universe could hear. Nahir bowed respectfully. "Master, I have studied every law of manifestation. I know the principles of vibration, intention, alignment, and resonance. But life remains unmoved. Why do these laws fail me?" The mystic opened his eyes and regarded Nahir with a calm, piercing clarity. "They fail," he said softly, "because you follow laws that were meant to follow you." Nahir blinked. "What do you mean?" The mystic gestured toward the vast desert. "Tell me, scholar, what is the law that shapes these dunes?" Nahir thought carefully. "The wind." "And what moves the wind?" the mystic asked. Nahir hesitated. "The sun's heat, the turning of the world." The mystic nodded. "And what sets these events in motion?" Silence stretched between them. Finally, the mystic whispered, "The source behind all movement is recognition." Nahir felt a ripple of confusion. "Recognition?" The mystic lifted a single grain of sand. "This grain is nothing until you recognize it. This desert is endless until you recognize its boundary. Your life appears stuck because you have recognized it as such. Everything you perceive becomes obligated to meet the truth you have claimed." He leaned forward, voice lowering into a sacred whisper. "The universe cannot contradict what you believe you are. Those words struck Nahir like thunder across a clear sky. The mystic continued, "You study laws in hopes that they will give you power, but true power comes from the identity you occupy. You believe yourself to be a seeker, and so the universe must give you searching. You believe yourself to be lacking, and so the universe must mirror lack. You believe you must learn more, and so the universe withholds experiences that would reveal your mastery." Nahir swallowed hard. "Then what is the true law? The law beneath all others?" The mystic smiled gently. "What you recognize as real becomes real, not because you command it, but because reality is compelled to reflect the consciousness you inhabit." He motioned for Nahir to sit, and together they watched the desert as wind sculpted new patterns into the dunes. "Reality is not a puzzle to solve," the mystic said. "It is a mirror, and the mirror does not respond to effort, only to recognition. When you recognize yourself as aligned, life aligns. When you recognize yourself as abundant, abundance appears. When you recognize yourself as guided, synchronicity surrounds you." Nahir felt tears rising not from sadness, but from the profound weight of understanding. The mystic pressed a hand to his chest. "You have tried to shape reality through knowledge. Now shape it through being. For the universe does not follow your words. It follows the vibration of who you believe yourself to be in the quietest chamber of your soul." Nahir closed his eyes, and for the first time, instead of repeating mantras or reciting teachings, he whispered a simple truth he had never dared to claim: "I am the one life supports." The desert wind shifted. The air softened. Something invisible and immense moved within him. When he opened his eyes, the world felt different, not because it had changed, but because he had recognized a truer version of himself. This was the moment his destiny began to turn. And this, dear listener, is the essence of the law before all laws. Your life expands or contracts according to the truth you are willing to recognize within yourself. When you shift your recognition, reality has no choice but to follow. Chapter 6. The Softening, where resistance dies. In a mountain village, surrounded by whispering pines and cascading waterfalls, there lived a man named Joran, whose life was a constant battle. He fought for opportunity. He fought for respect. He fought for every inch of progress. He believed, as many do, that success belonged to the strongest, the most relentless, the ones who never yielded. And so he hardened himself, body and soul, determined to overcome life through force. Yet, the more Joran pushed, the more life pushed back. Opportunities slipped from his grasp. Relationships strained beneath the weight of his tension. Even moments of joy felt fragile, overshadowed by the fear that everything he gained could be lost. Joran's life was a clenched fist. One winter morning, worn down by years of struggle, Joran sought refuge in the forest. Snow blanketed the world in silent, white, softening every edge. For the first time in months, the relentless noise of his mind quieted. He wandered deeper, until he found a small wooden bridge spanning a frozen stream. On the bridge stood a woman wrapped in a woolen cloak, her breath rising in gentle clouds. She held a wooden staff, though she leaned on it not from weakness, but with an air of deep ease. When she noticed Joran, she smiled warmly. "Your footsteps are loud with struggle." Joran frowned. "How can footsteps struggle?" She tapped her staff lightly. "Footsteps reveal the heart that carries them." He approached cautiously. "Who are you?" "A guide," she said simply. "Not to the forest, but to the freedom you once knew." Joran scoffed. "Freedom? My whole life is resistance. Nothing comes easily." "That is because you have believed," she replied. "That hardness is strength. But strength belongs not to the rigid, but to the soft." Joran folded his arms. "Softness doesn't protect anyone." The woman stepped closer, raising her staff. She brought its tip down onto a patch of ice, covering the stream. It cracked loudly, but instead of breaking apart, the ice flexed, absorbed the impact, and returned to stillness. "Do you see?" she said. "The ice is frozen, rigid, and yet it resists change with tension that brings only brittleness. But the water beneath it," she pointed to a small opening, where water curved gently around a rock. "The water yields, so it cannot be broken." She looked at him with eyes bright as winter moonlight. "What yields cannot shatter. What softens cannot be trapped." Joran felt a strange heat in his chest, an uncomfortable truth rising. The woman continued, "You believe resistance protects you, but resistance is the very thing that invites struggle. Life cannot flow to the clenched." She stepped aside and gestured toward the stream. "Sit." Joran sat reluctantly. "Close your eyes," she instructed. "Tell me what you feel in your body." He scanned himself. Tight jaw, contracted stomach, shoulders like stone. "All tight," he muttered. "Good," she said. "Now breathe, and soften by 1 degree. 1 degree? Yes," she smiled. "Not all at once. Just soften something small. A single breath's worth." Joran exhaled. His jaw loosened slightly. "Again," she whispered. "Soften by 1 more degree." He breathed deeper. His shoulders dropped. The winter air felt gentler. The snow seemed brighter. "Do you feel it?" she asked. Joran nodded slowly. "Something is easing." "That is the beginning," she said. "Softening is not weakness. It is the surrender of tension, not the surrender of power." She touched his chest lightly with her staff. "This," she said, "is where resistance dies, not through force, but through release, not through tightening, but through trust." Joran felt emotion swell unexpectedly behind his sternum. He had been holding himself together for so long that he'd forgotten what it felt like to let go. The woman knelt beside him, her voice softer now. "You have lived as though the world must be fought. But listen to me carefully. Life does not respond to your effort. It responds to your openness." She guided him through several breaths, each one deepening the softening inside him. And then something remarkable happened. With each breath, Joran's awareness expanded. He felt the forest around him, the hush of snow, the whisper of trees, the hum of energy weaving through all things. He felt connected, held, supported. For the first time he realized he had not been carrying struggle. Struggle had been carrying him. The woman spoke gently, but with authority. "The universe is always ready to flow toward you, but flow cannot enter where tension stands guard." Joran's eyes opened. Tears streamed down his face, not from sorrow, but from the relief of finally unclenching the part of him that had been braced against life for years. She stood, leaning on her staff. "Softening is the portal to every breakthrough. It dissolves the armor you never needed and reveals the strength you always had." Joran rose beside her, feeling strangely light, as though he had shed something invisible, but heavy. As she walked away, she offered one final truth. Life rushes to those who soften, because softness is the signal that you are ready to receive. And as the snow continued to fall like whispered blessings around him, Joran knew that his struggle had ended not because life had changed, but because he had finally released the resistance that kept life out. Chapter 7. The energetic posture of receiving. In a quiet monastery perched on the edge of a sacred mountain, where clouds drifted low enough to kiss the earth, lived a young monk named Arin. Though he had trained for years under wise teachers, learning the arts of meditation, breathwork, and stillness, he carried a secret burden in his heart. Arin could not receive. When offered praise, he deflected. When given gifts, he refused. When help was extended, he insisted he needed none. When opportunities arose, he convinced himself he was unworthy. He believed this was humility. He believed this was discipline. But the universe saw it for what it truly was. A closed, energetic posture, a stance that blocked life's flow. Arin longed to experience divine synchronicities and effortless blessings, those whispered miracles the monks wrote about in ancient texts. Yet his path felt barren, dry, unresponsive. No matter how he prayed, meditated, or affirmed, the river of life seemed to flow around him, rather than toward him. One morning, his teacher, a serene elder named Master Yon, invited Arin to walk with him through the monastery garden. Dew sparkled on the leaves, and sunlight filtered through the cherry blossoms like blessings descending from heaven. "Arin," Master Yon said, "tell me why you think the universe has not answered your prayers." Arin lowered his head. "I have not practiced hard enough. My spirit is not pure enough. Perhaps I am not worthy." Master Yon paused, studying a droplet of dew, balanced delicately on a petal. "Look at this droplet," he said. "Why does it remain on the flower?" "Because the petal receives it," Arin replied. "Exactly," Master Yon nodded. "And why does this petal receive, while others remain dry?" I don't know," Master Yon smiled gently. "Because this petal is open. Its curvature allows the dew to rest. It welcomes. The others are angled away, closed, turned inward. They cannot receive what is offered." He looked into Arin's eyes. "And so it is with you." Arin felt his breath catch. Master Yon continued, "The universe showers blessings continuously, opportunities, support, love, abundance. But these cannot land upon a posture that is closed. You pray to receive, yet your stance is one of refusal." Arin felt heat rise in his chest. "I don't refuse. I'm grateful for everything." "Gratitude is not receiving," Master Yon interrupted softly. "Gratitude is appreciation after receiving. But receiving begins before gratitude with openness, with willingness, with trust." He tapped Arin's heart lightly. "You fear receiving because you believe you must earn every blessing. But the universe does not operate by merit. It operates by alignment." Arin swallowed. "Then what is the posture of receiving?" Master Yon sat beneath a cherry tree and motioned for Arin to join him. "Let me tell you a story," he began. "Many years ago, a traveler came to the monastery seeking enlightenment. He brought gifts of gold, incense, and rare herbs, believing he could win the favor of the masters. When he presented his offerings, the monks accepted them gratefully, except for one master, Master Kiro, the oldest and wisest of all. The traveler approached Master Kiro and bowed deeply. "Please, accept my gift," he said. Master Kiro remained still. "No." The traveler was shocked. "Why not?" Master Kiro smiled. "Because you do not offer these for me. You offer them to ease your own fear. Fear that you are not enough without gifts. Fear that you must prove your worth before receiving wisdom." The traveler grew frustrated. "Then how can I receive enlightenment?" Master Kiro extended an empty hand. "By holding your palm open," he said. "You cannot fill a clenched fist." The traveler stared at the master's open palm, and something inside him shattered. For the first time in his life, he understood. He had never known how to receive. He had known only how to earn, bargain, and strive. He dropped to his knees, weeping not from sorrow, but from release. And only then did Master Kiro place a single lotus petal into the traveler's open hand. As Master Yon finished the story, Arin felt tears welling behind his eyes. "I have been the clenched fist," Arin whispered. "I see it now." "Yes," Master Yon said gently. "You have been trying to receive with a posture shaped by fear and unworthiness." He placed both hands on his heart. "Your posture must change from prove and push to open and allow." Arin closed his eyes. The realization bloomed within him like the very lotus petals that floated in the monastery pond. "Teach me," he pleaded. "Teach me how to receive." Master Yon nodded. "Receiving is an inner stance, a frequency. It is cultivated through these three truths. 1. I am worthy of what flows to me. 2. I do not need to earn what is already mine. 3. Life is ready to give the moment I am ready to open. Aaron inhaled deeply. With that breath, something loosened inside him. A grip, a defense, a belief that he had worn like armor. And now, Master Yon said, "You begin." Aaron looked down at his own hands that had always reached, grasped, and strained. For the first time, he opened them fully, and in that simple, sacred gesture, the universe felt his shift. The energetic posture of receiving had awakened. Chapter 8. The Silent Repellents. There are forces within you, subtle, unconscious forces that repel the very experiences you long for. They do not shout, they do not announce themselves. They move quietly, like shadows cast by unexamined beliefs. This is why so many seekers work tirelessly, affirm endlessly, visualize passionately, yet find that manifestation avoids them, like a bird avoiding a net it cannot see. Because beneath all the words and effort, there exist silent repellents. This truth reveals itself through the story of a woman named Tala. Tala lived near the edge of a windswept cliff, overlooking the sea. She dreamed of abundance, connection, and purpose, so deeply that her heart ached with longing. Every morning, she lit incense, whispered affirmations, and envisioned a brighter future. Yet nothing changed. The same walls circled her life, the same struggles repeated, the same opportunities slipped away silently, like ships vanishing beyond the horizon. One evening, overwhelmed by frustration, Tala walked along the cliffside until she encountered an elderly fisherman sitting beside a weathered boat. His face was carved with years, but softened by gentle wisdom. He watched the waves thoughtfully before speaking. "You look like someone waiting for the tide to bring you something." Tala sighed. "I'm trying. I'm doing everything right, but nothing comes." The fisherman nodded. "Most people believe the sea withholds, but the sea never withholds. It only reflects." He turned to her, eyes sharp as sea glass. "Tell me, child, what inside you refuses what you claim to want?" Tala felt a shiver run through her. "I don't refuse," she protested. He raised a hand. "Not consciously, but below the surface. There are currents. Let me show you." He gestured to his fishing net, lying across the boat. "This net looks empty," he said. "But watch." He lifted it, and Tala saw dozens of tiny holes, so small they were nearly invisible. "When the net is whole, it receives," he explained. "But when small tears go unnoticed, the fish slip through. These tears do not announce themselves. They act silently, yet they decide everything." He lowered the net into Tala's hands. "Your energy is this net," he said, "and you have tiny tears, silent repellents that let blessings slip away before they reach you." Tala's heart pounded. "What are these silent repellents?" The fisherman smiled sadly. "There are many, but they usually appear as these. 1. Fear of receiving more than you can sustain. 2. Belief that blessings come with hidden costs. 3. Expectation that good things vanish quickly. 4. Deep suspicion of ease. 5. Old wounds whispering, "You are not ready." 6. Identity built around struggle. Each truth struck Tala like a sudden gust of wind. He continued, "You can call abundance to you every day, but if even one repellent hums beneath your awareness, abundance cannot stay." He placed the net between them. "Would you like to repair this?" Tala nodded, her throat tight. "Then sit," he said, "and listen." The fisherman guided her through a process older than memory, one practiced by ancient navigators, who understood that the sea responded to the heart's condition. "Close your eyes," he whispered. "Go inward. Find the place where you fear what you ask for." Tala searched. At first, she felt nothing. Then, like a faint echo rising from a deep cave, she sensed it, a small, tight knot in her solar plexus, pulsing with the belief, if blessings come, something will go wrong. A silent repellent. she gasped. "There," the fisherman said gently. "Name it," Tala whispered. "Fear of losing what I receive." He nodded. "Now another. What else lives beneath your longing?" She felt deeper, and another truth rose like a slow tide. "If life becomes easy, I will lose my identity." Another silent repellent. Tala clutched her chest as tears formed. The fisherman placed a weathered hand on hers. "Child, you cannot receive from life while clinging to who you were in the hardship." She breathed shakily. Then a final realization surfaced, the deepest of all. "I am afraid of being seen thriving." She felt it in her bones, the fear of jealousy, judgment, being resented. A fear so ancient it had shaped her posture for years. The fisherman sighed with compassion. "These," he said, "are the holes in your net. These are what push blessings away before they can land." He took the net gently. "And now we mend." He showed her how to weave new threads through the tears, delicate, patient work that required presence, honesty, and tenderness. "This," he said, "is how you heal your receiving field, by bringing light to what hides beneath your desire." As they mended, the horizon glowed with the first light of dawn. When the net was whole, the fisherman held it up proudly. "Now," he said, "you are ready to receive." Tala felt something shift within her, a repairing, a strengthening, a clearing of the very energy that had repelled her blessings. The silent repellents were no longer silent. They were no longer hidden, and without secrecy, they lost their power. As she walked home, the world around her felt different, not because life had changed, but because her energy had become permeable to good. And that is the truth. Once the silent repellents dissolve, blessings no longer slip away. They arrive, and they stay. Chapter 9. The door that only openness opens high in the mountains of the east, where the dawn cast rivers of gold across the peaks, and silence held a kind of sacred intelligence. There existed a temple, whispered about in every nearby village. The monks spoke of a single door within this temple, an ancient door carved from moonstone and cedar that could only be opened by those who had mastered the inner art of openness. They called it the Door of Yielding Light. Many pilgrims traveled from distant lands to witness it, each believing they possessed the strength, wisdom, or spiritual insight necessary to open it. Yet centuries passed, and only a handful had ever succeeded. Among those who sought its mystery was a young woman named Leora. She was a skilled healer, respected by many, but inside her heart she carried a quiet, relentless tension. She believed that in order to protect others, she had to carry everything, every burden, every responsibility, every pain that was not hers. She wore her strength like armor. She wore her resilience like a shield. She wore her generosity like a duty. But beneath it all, she was tired. Tired in a way rest could not mend. One morning, with her spirit fraying at the edges, Leora began the long pilgrimage to the mountain temple. She walked through forests, crossed rivers, and climbed steep cliffs, determined to reach the place where she believed she would find clarity, or peace, or perhaps some forgotten part of herself. When she reached the temple entrance, she was greeted by an old monk sweeping fallen petals into a basket. His posture was relaxed, serene, as though sweeping petals was the highest form of prayer. "You seek the door," he said without looking up. Leora blinked in surprise. "How did you know?" The monk swept another handful of petals. "Only the burdened come with such haste." Leora opened her mouth to defend herself, but the monk raised a gentle hand. "No need to speak. The door listens more deeply than words." He gestured for her to follow. They walked through halls that echoed with ancient chants and soft sunlight. Eventually they arrived at the chamber where the legendary door stood. It shimmered faintly, as if carved from light itself. Patterns danced across its surface, symbols that seemed to shift according to the breath of the onlooker. Leora approached eagerly. Placing her palms against the cool surface, she whispered a prayer, summoned her intention, and pressed. Nothing. The door did not budge, not even a tremor. The monk watched quietly. Leora tried again, this time with force, with strength in her arms and tension in her jaw. But again, nothing. Frustration rose within her like heat. "I'm ready," she insisted. "Why won't it open?" The monk stepped beside her. "Because this door does not respond to readiness defined by effort. It responds to readiness defined by openness." Leora frowned. "I am open." He smiled gently. "Your body says otherwise. Your energy is braced. Your heart is armored. Your breath is held. You stand as one prepared for battle, not as one prepared to receive." Leora turned away, her eyes stinging. "I have to be strong. I have to protect myself." "Strength is not the problem," the monk said softly. "The problem is your belief that openness is vulnerability. But openness is not exposure. It is alignment." He guided her to sit beside him on the floor. "Let me tell you the story of the door," he began. "Long ago, when the temple was first built, there was no door at all. The chamber was open air, filled with sunlight and the soft rustle of bamboo. The monks believed that truth required no barrier, and thus they placed no physical obstacle between themselves and enlightenment. But villagers from the nearby mountains kept arriving, demanding answers, not seeking, demanding. They came with urgency, frustration, expectations, and entitlement. They wanted truth on their timeline, on their terms. And so, the monks built a door not to keep truth hidden, but to keep the unready from entering. "What makes someone ready?" they asked the oldest monk among them. And he answered, "One cannot enter a space of light with a heart closed to it." So, they enchanted the door with the simplest yet most profound requirement. It will open only when the person before it is energetically open. Open in breath, open in heart, open in willingness, open in surrender, open in trust, not open in effort, not open in intellect, not open in force, open in being. The monk looked at Leora. "You have spent so long guarding yourself that you no longer know the shape of openness." Leora lowered her eyes, tears spilling freely now. "I am afraid," she whispered. "Of what?" "Of letting go, of losing control, of being hurt." The monk nodded. "And yet it is the tightness around your heart that hurts you more deeply than anything life could ever deliver." He guided her to place her hands over her chest. "Breathe here," he said. "Not to change anything, not to fix anything, just to feel." Leora inhaled shakily. "Again," he whispered, softer. As she breathed, the tension in her chest loosened. The armor she had worn for years began to crack. Tears poured from her eyes, not from pain, but from release. "Now," the monk said, "stand before the door again. Not to push it open. Simply stand as one who no longer fears being open." Leora approached slowly. She placed her palms on the moonstone surface, but this time she did not push. She did not command. She did not brace. She softened. She exhaled, and the door glowed. A soft hum vibrated through the chamber. The symbols ignited with light. Then, with no physical effort at all, the door opened inward like petals parting before spring. Leora gasped. The monk bowed. "You see," he said, "some doors were never meant to open by force, only by openness." As she stepped through, she realized this was not just a temple mystery. It was a universal truth. There are doors in your life, opportunities, blessings, relationships, breakthroughs, will only open when you stop trying to force them and begin opening yourself. The door of yielding light taught her the greatest lesson of her life. What you fear to open within yourself is what the universe cannot open for you. But the moment you soften, the moment you surrender, the moment you trust, life opens. Every time. Chapter 10. When life becomes a mirror of ease. There is a moment in every seeker's journey when the familiar patterns of struggle begin to dissolve, and life itself shifts into a mysterious, astonishing harmony. It does not happen with thunder. It does not happen with ceremony. It emerges the way dawn does, softly, naturally, inevitably. This is the moment when life becomes a mirror of ease. To understand this transformation, we travel now to a sunlit village built along a tranquil river. Its people believed the river held answers to questions not yet asked, and that its gentle current reflected the deeper currents within the human spirit. In this village lived a man named Elior. He was kind, diligent, and endlessly committed to improving himself. But Elior's life had become a marathon. Every goal required immense effort. Every accomplishment was earned through struggle. Every blessing felt hard-won. He believed that ease was dangerous. He believed that ease was for the uncommitted. He believed that ease was an illusion. He admired those who worked harder than him, envying their endurance, while dismissing his own exhaustion as weakness. But Elior was tired. His soul was threadbare. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, he sat by the riverbank, staring at the water, in frustrated silence. It flowed effortlessly, its surface gleaming with the last hues of sunset. "How do you do it?" he muttered at the water. "How do you move without resistance? How do you find your way without force?" To his surprise, an old woman sitting nearby chuckled. "Talking to rivers now, are we?" she said. Elior stiffened. "I'm just tired." The woman nodded knowingly. Most who come to the river seeking peace are not tired from life. They are tired from resisting life. Elior frowned. "I'm not resisting. I'm working hard." "Ah," she said. "Hard work. The most socially celebrated form of resistance." Elior blinked. "What does that mean?" She tapped the surface of the river with a long reed. The water rippled effortlessly. "This river," she said, "does not arrive at the ocean by force. It arrives because its nature aligns with flow." She turned to Elior. "You have mistaken tension for dedication, struggle for strength, exhaustion for virtue. But life, real life, responds to your state, not your sweat." Elior clenched his fists. "Are you saying I shouldn't work?" She laughed softly. "Work is beautiful. Work is sacred. But struggling is optional." He looked down at the water, confusion tugging at him. "Listen," she said, her voice softening. "Life is always mirroring your internal state. If your inner world is tight, rushed, fearful, or braced, then life reflects this back to you through delays, complications, and resistance." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "But when your inner world becomes easeful, open, trustful, unhurried, life reflects that back too." Elior swallowed hard. "How do I change that?" She smiled. "Let me tell you a story. There was once a potter named Marin, whose clay vessels were so beautiful they seemed to hum with spirit. Students flocked to her, hoping to learn her craft. But no matter how closely they studied her techniques, their pots came out warped, uneven, flawed. One day, a student named Ria approached Marin with tears of frustration. "I copy everything you do," she said. "Your grip, your pressure, your timing, but my work still fights me." Marin nodded. "Your clay fights because you fight." She guided Ria's hands to the wheel. "You approach creation with tension, as though waiting for something to go wrong. Clay feels this. Life feels this." Then she placed her own hand on the spinning clay. Her touch was soft, effortless. "Creation," she whispered, "responds to ease." As Ria slowed her breath and relaxed her shoulders, something changed. The clay yielded. The shape softened. Beauty emerged without struggle. Marin smiled. What flows from ease carries the imprint of ease. What flows from tension carries the imprint of tension. Life works the same way. Elior stared at the rippling river with new eyes. Something deep inside him shifted not dramatically, but subtly, like a locked muscle releasing after years of tension. "So, what do I do?" he asked. The woman dipped her fingers into the water. "You soften, you breathe, you release your grip, you trust that not every good thing must be earned through struggle." She looked directly into his eyes. Ease is not the absence of effort. Ease is the absence of resistance. Elio felt tears gather, unbidden. "I don't know how to live that way." "You don't have to know," she whispered. "You only have to begin." He closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, and let the breath out slow, unforced, honest. The river answered with a gentle swell. Elio felt something profound as he watched its movement. Life had never intended to be difficult. Life had only mirrored the difficulty he held inside. And as he softened, the world around him softened too. Birds sang more sweetly. The breeze felt kinder. His body felt lighter. His mind felt spacious. For the first time in years, he felt as though life was not a mountain to climb, but a river ready to carry him. And in that moment, Elio understood. When ease becomes your inner state, life becomes your mirror, reflecting back everything your openness invites. Chapter 11. The universe has always been on your side. There is a belief woven quietly into the fabric of human consciousness, a belief inherited from generations who struggled under the weight of uncertainty. It is the belief that life is indifferent, or random, or worse, that it works against you. Most people never question this assumption. They accept it as truth because it mirrors their struggles. They interpret difficulty as opposition, and opposition as evidence of abandonment. But ancient mystics knew something different, a truth far softer, far kinder, far more intelligent. The universe has never been your adversary. It has always been your mirror responding, guiding, reshaping itself around your vibration. To illuminate this truth, we turn to the story of a man named Fenric. Fenric lived in a coastal village battered often by storms. His childhood memories were filled with images of shuttered windows, lightning splitting the sky, and waves that roared like angry spirits. Over time, he came to believe the storms were personal punishments, omens, signs that life itself disapproved of him. He carried that belief into adulthood. Whenever something went wrong, when a deal fell through, when a friendship faded, when illness passed through his home, he whispered the same defeated phrase, "Life is against me." His vibration, unnoticed but powerful, continually reaffirmed that belief, and reality, ever faithful to the internal state of consciousness, mirrored it back. One night, after a particularly violent storm had devastated his small boat, his only source of income, Fenric wandered along the shoreline in despair. The tide had pulled broken wood across the sand, like scattered bones. His future felt lost. As he stumbled toward the cliffs at the far end of the beach, he encountered an old woman sitting calmly beside a lantern that flickered gold in the windless night. Her clothes were simple, her eyes ancient, her presence unmistakably serene. "You walk with heavy conclusions," she said, without turning. Fenric stopped. "What?" She motioned for him to sit beside her. "Your steps are loud with certainty, the certainty that life opposes you." Fenric scoffed bitterly. "Look around you. How could it not? Everything I touch falls apart." The old woman smiled. "No, everything you expect to fall apart will crumble, because the universe responds to the song beneath your words, not the story you tell yourself." Fenric frowned. "What song?" She placed her hand on her heart. "The vibration you carry here, the unspoken belief that life is your enemy." Fenric looked away, the pain raw inside him. "If the universe is on my side, then why all this loss?" The woman lifted her lantern, letting its glow dance across the waves. "Let me tell you a story," she said. "Long ago, the fishermen of this coast navigated without maps. They studied the tides, the stars, and the currents with profound intuition. But among them was one fisherman who always returned empty-handed. No matter how perfect his technique, the fish evaded him. No matter how calm the sea, the winds turned against him. Convinced the ocean despised him, he cursed it daily. Finally, he climbed the highest cliff and shouted into the storm, "Why do you fight me?" And the ocean, in its wisdom, whispered back through the wind, "I do not oppose you. I protect you. The fish you chased would have led you to a reef that would tear your boat apart. The winds that turned you back spared you from a storm. The emptiness you feared was guidance, not rejection." The fisherman wept, realizing he had mistaken protection for punishment. From that day forward, he changed a single belief: the ocean is for me. And the tides responded in kind. The old woman lowered her lantern. "Fenric, do you see? Your storms were not signs of opposition. They were corrections, redirects, nudges away from paths that could break you." Fenric shook his head. "But my boat is gone, because another path awaits. You," she murmured, "one you cannot reach while clinging to the wreckage of what was." He looked at her, his voice barely a whisper. "Then, what do I do?" She touched his shoulder gently. "Shift your premise. The universe is not against you. Say it. Feel it. Let your bones remember it." Fenric inhaled. His voice trembled. "Life is for me." Again, softer. "Life is for me." A third time, not as repetition, but as recognition. "Life has always been for me." The old woman smiled, her lantern glowing brighter. "In that shift," she said, "your entire reality will pivot. The world has never been your enemy, child. Only your belief has." As dawn stretched pink fingers across the sky, Fenric felt something he had not felt in years: possibility. And in the months that followed, everything changed. He discovered new opportunities untouched by the storm's destruction. He was offered work, helping rebuild the docks, work that connected him to new people, new skills, new pathways. And eventually, he found a calling more aligned with his heart than fishing had ever been. But none of that began with action. It began with a shift in belief. Life is not punishing me. Life is positioning me. This is the law you must remember. The universe has always been on your side. The moment you stop assuming opposition, life reveals its support. Chapter 12. Vibration before vision. Every manifestation begins twice. First in the unseen, then in the seen. But what most seekers misunderstand is that the unseen creation is not made of images or intentions. It is made of vibration. Vision is secondary. Emotion is primary. Frequency precedes form. This is the teaching at the heart of Chapter 12. To reveal its depth, we travel to a bustling city encircled by mountains, where a young architect named Kale devoted his life to designing extraordinary buildings. His visions were stunning cathedrals of glass, bridges of ten, silver, homes that embraced sunlight like living beings. He poured his soul into blueprints, sketches, and models. But despite his genius, none of his designs were ever chosen. His presentations fell flat. His proposals were always declined. The problem was not his talent. It was his vibration. Kale lived with an invisible weight, the belief that he needed to prove himself. Every sketch he drew was laced with urgency. Every presentation was steeped in fear. Every vision was overshadowed by inner doubt. The universe did not ignore his vision. It reflected his vibration. One morning, defeated after yet another rejection, Kale wandered into an old library hidden behind a narrow alleyway. Dust drifted lazily through beams of sunlight. Rows of ancient books lined the walls, their spines inscribed with forgotten languages. At the far end of the room sat a woman draped in indigo robes. Her presence radiated stillness. "You carry beautiful visions," she said, without looking up, "but your vibration contradicts them." Kale stopped in his tracks. "How do you know?" She gestured for him to sit. "Your energy speaks louder than your words." He sat reluctantly. "What am I doing wrong?" "You are trying to build from the outside in," she said. "But all creation begins from the inside out." She placed a crystal sphere on the table between them. It glowed faintly, reflecting Cale's distorted expression. "You see the distortion?" she asked. Cale nodded. "This is your vision," she said. "You imagine clarity, success, expansion. But your vibration is fear, doubt, and pressure. So the universe mirrors the vibration, not the vision." Cale swallowed hard. "Then what should I do?" She leaned closer. "Feel the end before you see the beginning." Cale frowned. "Feel it? Not visualize it?" "Visualization without emotion is shallow," she explained. "Emotion without alignment is chaotic. But vibration is truth. It is the signature of your future, expressed now." She closed her eyes. "Let me tell you a story," she said. "There was once a painter who longed to capture the perfect sunrise. Every morning he sat before his canvas as dawn broke. But no matter how vibrant the sky, his painting looked dull. One day, in frustration, he threw down his brush. "Why can I not paint the sunrise?" A blind woman nearby smiled. "Because you are trying to paint what you see. But sunrise is not seen first. It is felt." "How can you feel a sunrise?" he asked. She reached out her hands. "I know dawn, not by color, but by vibration. The stillness, the promise, the warmth, the opening. Feel the sunrise in your body, and the paint will know what to become." The painter closed his eyes and felt it. The hush before light, the soft expansion of day, the warmth rising from the earth. And when he opened his eyes, his brush moved effortlessly. His painting glowed with a sunrise more alive than the sky itself. The woman in indigo looked at Cale. "Your buildings, your dreams, your goals, they must be felt into truth before they can become truth." Cale breathed shakily. "How do I change my vibration?" "You stop thinking about the form," she said, "and start embodying the frequency." "What does that feel like?" he asked. "Choose your desire," she said. "Now ask, what is the emotional essence of its fulfillment?" Cale hesitated, then whispered, "Freedom, peace, confidence." "Good," she said. "Now feel that." He closed his eyes. At first, nothing happened. His mind wandered. His breath caught. Resistance tightened his chest. But the woman didn't interrupt. She simply waited. Finally, something softened. A warmth bloomed in his belly. His breath deepened. His shoulders released. The vibration of confidence, not its image, began to fill him. When he opened his eyes, the crystal sphere reflected him clearly, without distortion. The woman nodded. "Now," she said, "you are aligned. Now your visions can form." And in the months that followed, Cale's life transformed. His next design was accepted not because it was better than the others, but because his vibration matched what he desired. Clients sought him out. Opportunities flowed naturally. Doors opened on their own. Why? Because he finally understood. Your vibration is the blueprint. Your vision is the construction. Vibration comes first, and vision follows, obediently. Chapter 13. The Myth of Luck. From the earliest days of human wandering, people have gazed at the skies and whispered of fortune, of stars that favor some and forsake others. Poets have written of luck as a fickle mistress, scholars have named it chance, and common hearts have blamed it for blessing neighbors while bypassing their own doorsteps. But the ancient teachers knew something different, a truth far more elegant, far more empowering. Luck does not choose you. You choose the frequency where luck already lives. This chapter begins with the story of a wandering merchant named Silas. Silas traveled from village to village, selling spices and rare herbs. Though he worked tirelessly, he always seemed to arrive just after the busiest markets had ended, or just before storms drove people indoors. Competitors thrived. He struggled. At every tavern he visited, he heard the same quiet pity. Poor Silas. Luck never walks beside him. Eventually, Silas began to believe this. He carried the belief like a stone in his pocket, small but heavy. Whenever misfortune struck, he fingered the stone and said aloud, "Luck is not mine." One evening, after a string of disappointing days, Silas reached a remote village perched high in the mountains. Snow dusted the rooftops like powdered sugar, and lanterns flickered against the twilight. In the center of the village stood a modest shrine, tended by a solitary figure wrapped in a woolen cloak. Drawn by an impulse he could not explain, Silas approached. The shrinekeeper, an elderly woman with clear amber eyes, studied him quietly. "You carry the posture of someone searching for luck," she said. Silas sighed. "Luck avoids me. Always has." The woman smiled gently. "Luck is not a creature that wanders the world choosing favorites. Luck is a mirror, and your mirror is clouded." Silas frowned. "Then teach me how to clean it." She motioned for him to sit beside her on the stone steps. "Let me tell you a story," she began. "Long ago, two brothers lived in a valley, blessed with fertile soil and abundant harvests. The elder brother, Barron, believed himself fortunate. He expected success. He anticipated abundance. When a problem arose, he assumed it would resolve itself in his favor. The younger brother, Dalen, believed himself unfortunate. He saw obstacles where others saw opportunities. He braced for trouble even when none was present. He assumed life would fail him because it always had. One year, a drought loomed over the valley. As the sun scorched the earth, Barron rose early and tended his fields. With calm confidence, he dug deeper irrigation channels, believing the water hidden below the surface simply awaited his readiness to find it. Dalen, however, cursed the sky. "Luck never smiles on me," he muttered. "This drought will ruin everything." He hesitated to act, convinced that effort was pointless without luck's approval. Within a week, Barron's deeper channels reached a hidden spring. His crops flourished. Within the same week, Dalen's fields dried to dust. The villagers marveled at Barron's good fortune. But the shrine keeper, who witnessed everything, said quietly, "Luck is simply the world responding to the one who believes it is already theirs." The woman looked at Silas. "Do you understand? Barron wasn't lucky. He was aligned. His belief created the lens through which opportunity could be seen." She leaned closer. "Luck is the meeting point between your expectation and the world's reflection. If you expect loss, you stand in the vibration where loss lives. If you expect struggle, you stand in the vibration of resistance. If you expect support, you stand in the vibration of flow." Silas looked down at his hands. "Then what of all the misfortune I've lived?" She shook her head. "Not misfortune, misdirection. Your life has been reflecting the vibration you did not know you were offering." "But how do I change it?" he whispered. She placed a warm hand over his chest. "By changing your premise of reality." Silas swallowed. "What premise?" "That you are chosen," she said softly. "Not selected above others, but chosen by life itself, worthy of its effortless orchestration." She continued, her voice like wind over snow. "You must understand, luck is not an external force. Luck is the alignment of inner readiness with outer opportunity. It is the universe saying yes to the version of you that says yes to yourself." She placed a small obsidian stone in Silas's palm. "Carry this, but know it is not the stone that changes your life. It is the belief you now cultivate." Silas closed his eyes. He inhaled deeply, not out of hope, but out of recognition. A new idea began blooming within him. Life supports me in unseen ways. The next morning, something extraordinary occurred. Silas rose earlier than usual, and left the village before the roads were filled. Just a mile outside the village, he encountered a caravan of traders whose wagon wheel had broken. Desperate, They offered Silas a rare spice from their cargo at an incredibly low price in exchange for help and supplies. That spice sold out instantly at his next destination. Then again in the city after. Then again in the capital. Doors began opening, not through luck, but through alignment. Silas later returned to the shrine to thank the old woman. But she was gone. Only her sweeping broom remained, leaning against the stone steps. In its place, a message carved into the shrine wall. Luck is the shadow of belief. Change the belief, and the shadow follows. And from that day forward, Silas never again uttered the words, "Luck avoids me." Instead, he lived by a new truth. Good things are already on their way to meet my readiness. And the universe, always listening, rearranged itself to match the frequency of his new perception. Chapter 14. Timelines and Trust. There is an invisible rhythm to every manifestation, a divine timing that unfolds with the precision of celestial mechanics. But humans, conditioned by urgency and fear, often demand that blessings arrive on their schedule. They believe that if something is delayed, it is denied. If something takes time, it has failed. But ancient wisdom tells another story. Nothing you desire is denied to you. It only arrives when you are vibrationally ripened to receive it. This chapter opens with the tale of a woman named Oriel. Oriel lived in a valley surrounded by orchards that bloomed each spring in breathtaking displays of white and pink petals. Her father had been a respected orchard keeper, known for his uncanny ability to predict exactly when the fruit would ripen, never too early, never too late. Oriel inherited the orchard after his passing, but unlike her father, she feared uncertainty. She feared waiting. She feared the in-between. She worried constantly that the crop would fail if she didn't intervene and force things to happen. So she pushed. She pressured. She interfered with the natural cycles her father had honored. She attempted to accelerate the ripening of fruit using heat lamps and early harvest schedules. The result? Fruit that looked ripe but tasted sour. Fruit that bruised easily and rotted quickly. Fruit that lacked the sweetness that comes only from time. 1. Autumn. After an especially disappointing harvest, Oriel sat among the falling leaves, her heart heavy with defeat. The orchard felt quiet, too quiet. As she wept beneath a withering tree, an elderly man approached. His face was weathered by years of sun, and his hands carried the earth's memory in their lines. "You rush nature," he said gently, "and then mourn the outcome." Oriel wiped her tears. "I'm afraid if I don't make things happen, they won't happen at all." The man smiled wistfully. "Let me tell you a truth your father understood, and you have forgotten." He knelt beside a cluster of grounded apples and picked one up. "Every desire has its own season. Every blessing has its own hour. You cannot rush sweetness. You cannot force ripening." He looked into her eyes. "And what you call delay is often divine protection." Oriel frowned. "Protection? How?" "Because premature manifestations collapse. They devour themselves. They spoil, before they can nourish you." He offered her the apple. "Taste it." She bit into it. It was bitter, hollow, unripe. "This," he said, "is what happens when you demand your blessings before their time." Oriel bowed her head. "Then what should I do?" He pointed to the orchard around them. "Do what the trees do." Oriel blinked. "Which is, trust," he said simply. "Trust the unseen processes. Trust the timing you cannot accelerate. Trust the ripening you cannot force." He rested his hand against a sturdy apple tree. When a tree blooms too early, frost destroys it. When it ripens too late, pests consume it. The tree does not rush. It aligns with its own rhythm, and the universe aligns with it. Oriel listened quietly, her breath slowing. "Your desires are seeds," he continued. "Your emotions are the soil. Your beliefs are the climate, and your readiness is the season." He leaned closer. "Nothing comes too early. Nothing comes too late. Everything arrives the moment you vibrationally match its frequency. He stood and began walking away. Where are you going? Oriel called after him. To let the orchard teach you what I cannot, he replied. Days passed. Oriel walked through the groves without interfering. She watched. She listened. She noticed the subtle signs her father had once known instinctively, the texture of leaves, the scent of the bark, the depth of the soil, the way sunlight slowly coaxed sweetness into fruit. And then something unexpected happened. As she released her need to control, her energy softened, her anxiety dissolved, her presence deepened. The orchard responded. Birds returned. New blossoms formed. A gentle hum of life danced through the branches. She realized something profound. Her orchard had never failed her. She had failed its timing. By the following spring, Oriel had transformed her relationship with waiting. She tended the land with patience rather than panic. She trusted the invisible unfolding rather than doubting it. And that year, the orchard produced its sweetest harvest since her father's passing. One morning, as she picked a perfectly ripened apple, the elderly man returned. He smiled warmly. You've remembered what your father knew. Oriel offered him the apple. That nothing good comes early. He nodded. And nothing meant for you will ever come late. Oriel exhaled, a deep, peaceful release filling her lungs. Thank you, she whispered, for showing me that waiting isn't punishment. It never was, the man replied. Waiting is preparation. Waiting is alignment. Waiting is the universe, arranging the perfect moment. He turned to leave, his silhouette fading into the orchard path. Before disappearing, he called out one final truth. What ripens too soon will crumble. What ripens in time will nourish. Trust the time meant for you. From that day on, Oriel lived by a new understanding. Right timing is evidence of right unfolding. And the universe works with exquisite timing always, always in your favor. Chapter 15. The Alchemy of Contrast. In a quiet valley tucked between ancient hills and whispering pines, there lived a woman named June, whose dreams shimmered just beyond her grasp. She wanted more not out of greed, but out of a deep inner knowing that her life held potential she had not yet touched. Yet every step toward that potential seemed to lead into shadow. Plans unraveled, paths collapsed. Opportunities that glowed with promise would evaporate the moment she reached for them. With each disappointment, the light inside her dimmed just a little, and she wondered, as many do, why does life give me what I don't want? One morning, after another failed attempt at creating the life she envisioned, June wandered into the hills. The air was crisp. The sunlight painted soft golden edges along the stone. As she climbed, her mind churned with the same heavy question. Why must contrast be so painful? At the summit stood an old stone workshop, half overgrown with ivy. Smoke drifted lazily from its chimney. Curious, June approached and peered inside. There, illuminated by firelight, stood a master sculptor named Alejandro, a man whose name had echoed through generations. His hands hovered above a massive block of marble, his eyes soft with devotion. June hesitated at the doorway. May I watch? Alejandro turned to her, his face wrinkled but radiant. Of course, all who seek truth may enter. June stepped inside. Tools were scattered across wooden tables. Completed statues lined the room, each one so alive with emotion, she felt their stories stir in her chest. She pointed to the block of marble. Will that become something beautiful? Alejandro smiled gently. It already is. June tilted her head. But it's just stone. Alejandro placed his hand on the marble. This, he said, is potential. And potential always arrives in disguise. He gestured for her to come closer. Tell me, why are you here? June swallowed hard. My life keeps giving me what I don't want. Struggle, disappointment, pain. I feel the universe is pushing me away from what I'm trying to reach. Alejandro nodded knowingly. Ah, then you are in the alchemy. The what? She asked. "The alchemy of contrast," he said. "The sacred process by which life reveals your true path, by showing you what is not yours." He stepped toward the marble and struck it firmly with his chisel. A large piece broke away, falling to the floor. June flinched. "You destroyed it." Alejandro smiled. "No, I unveiled what it is not. Every chip removed reveals what wants to be seen. The stone resists not to punish me, but to guide my hands." He turned to her, eyes bright as embers. "So too does the universe reveal your path, not by giving you what you want, but by removing what you think you want, so you can discover what your soul truly seeks." June sank onto a nearby stool. "Then why does it feel so harsh?" Alejandro knelt beside her. "Because humans mistake contrast for rejection. But contrast is refinement, a teacher wrapped in discomfort." He picked up his chisel again. "When life gives you what you do not want, it clarifies what you do." Strike. Another shard fell. When a dream crumbles, it reveals a deeper one, hidden beneath. Strike. When a door closes, it directs your feet toward the correct door. Strike. When people leave, it creates space for those who are aligned with your becoming. Strike. June watched as the shapeless stone slowly revealed a hint of form beneath the rough surface. "Every disappointment," Alejandro said, "is a sculptor's strike, carving away what is not meant for your destiny." "But why must it hurt so much?" June whispered. "Because you resist the chiseling," he answered softly, "not knowing it is shaping the masterpiece of your life." He placed a warm hand over hers. "June, listen carefully. Contrast is not evidence of failure. It is evidence of direction. Life is not against you. Life is refining you." Tears welled in her eyes. "So, the pain has purpose?" "Yes," he said gently. "Pain is the friction between who you are and who you are becoming. The more you cling to what is not yours, the sharper the contrast must be." June looked at the marble again. "And what if I trust the contrast?" Alejandro smiled. "Then life no longer needs to shout. The chiseling becomes gentle, and eventually unnecessary." He stepped aside, revealing a partially formed statue beneath the broken fragments. "Your soul knows your shape," he said. "Contrast simply clears away what hides it." June breathed deeply, for the first time in weeks. "So, I shouldn't fear contrast," she said. He shook his head. "Contrast is the compass. It is life whispering, 'Not that way, this way.'" He placed the chisel in her hand. "Strike," he said. June hesitated. "I don't know how." "Then allow," he whispered. "For the first strike is never about skill, it is about surrender." She struck the marble. A small piece broke away. Alejandro nodded. "Good. Now you understand." As June left the workshop, something within her felt lighter. The disappointments she'd carried for years now glowed with new meaning. She whispered to the wind, "Every contrast refines me. Every no leads me to the perfect yes." And the valley, as if hearing her, exhaled with the soft warmth of a setting sun. Chapter 16. The Invisible Contract. Not all agreements are spoken. Not all bonds are chosen consciously. Some are woven in silence between souls, between lifetimes, between fears we never realized we were still carrying. These are the invisible contracts, energetic agreements that shape our experiences, until we awaken enough to rewrite them. To understand this profound truth, we follow the story of a man named Harold. Harold lived in a bustling city, carved from steel and ambition. On the surface, he seemed successful. He managed a team in a fast-growing company. He dressed well. He knew the right words to say at the right time. But beneath the polished exterior, Harold carried a relentless ache, because every relationship he formed, personal or professional, ended in betrayal. A colleague stealing his ideas, a friend taking advantage of him, a lover breaking promises. Again and again, the pattern repeated like a painful echo. After years of enduring the same wounds, Harold reached a breaking point. One evening, Desperate and exhausted, he wandered into a dimly lit bookstore tucked away between two towering buildings. Its sign read, "The Archive of Unseen Wisdom." The moment he stepped inside, the scent of old parchment and sandalwood wrapped around him like a familiar memory. At the back of the store stood a figure cloaked in silver-gray robes, sorting ancient scrolls. Without looking up, the figure said, "You're carrying a contract you did not choose." Harold froze. "What?" The figure turned an elderly mystic with eyes like polished obsidian. "You're wondering why betrayal follows you," the mystic said. "Why the same wound repeats in different faces." Harold swallowed. "How do you know that?" The mystic motioned for him to sit at a wooden table carved with constellations. "Because your energy speaks," the mystic said, "and it carries an old promise." Harold leaned forward. "What kind of promise?" The mystic sighed softly. "An invisible contract, formed long before you knew you were making it." Harold's mind raced. "I've never agreed to anything like that." "Not consciously," the mystic said. "But the unconscious remembers what the mind forgets." He unfurled an ancient scroll on the table. "There are 3 ways invisible contracts are formed. 1. Through trauma. 2. Through fear. 3. Through misinterpreted lessons. Let me explain." He pointed to a symbol on the scroll, a circle with a single crack. "When a wound occurs, especially early in life, the psyche forms a belief to protect itself. That belief becomes a contract." Harold felt his chest tighten. "What kind of belief?" The mystic looked at him with deep compassion. "A belief like, I must endure betrayal to learn resilience. Or, I am safest when I expect disappointment. Or, I must carry others' burdens to earn love. Or, I am meant to struggle alone." Harold's eyes widened. He whispered, I think I made one." The mystic nodded. "Say it." Harold closed his eyes, memories swirling. "When I was young, my father broke every promise he made. I learned not to expect loyalty. I learned that trust leads to pain." The mystic touched Harold's hand. "There. That is your contract." Harold felt tears forming. "Then what do I do? How do I break it?" The mystic smiled. "You do not break a contract. You rewrite it." He lifted a quill from the table. "You reclaim your authorship." Harold shook his head. "But how?" The mystic leaned in, voice soft as moonlight. "By recognizing that the contract no longer teaches. It only repeats." He guided Harold's hand to the quill. "Write your new agreement. The one aligned with your growth, not your wounds." Harold hesitated, then wrote slowly, "I release all agreements based on pain. I choose relationships that honor me. I choose trust aligned with discernment. I choose experiences that nourish my becoming." The mystic nodded, satisfied. "When an invisible contract is rewritten," he said, "your energy shifts, and life must shift with it." Harold felt something shift inside, a loosening, a softening, a liberation. But the mystic wasn't finished. "Tonight," he said, "perform the ritual of release." "What ritual?" Harold asked. The mystic handed him a thin candle wrapped in gold thread. "At twilight, stand alone in a room. Light this candle. Place your hand over your heart and speak these words. I release all unseen agreements that no longer teach through love." Say it with certainty. Say it with recognition. Then extinguish the flame with a gentle breath, a breath of surrender, not force. Harold took the candle carefully. "And after that?" he asked. The mystic smiled. "Watch how life rearranges itself. For when a soul becomes conscious of its contracts, destiny must be rewritten." That night, Harold performed the ritual. As the candle burned, he felt warmth move through his body. A heaviness left his chest. Old memories rose not to wound him, but to be released. When he whispered the sacred words, the room felt filled with unseen presence, not spirits, but potential. He extinguished the flame. The next morning, something had changed. People treated him differently. The energy around him felt lighter. He spoke with clarity. He walked with sovereignty. And the pattern that had haunted him for decades ended, because Harold had learned the truth. Invisible contracts shape your life until you become conscious enough to choose anew. Once rewritten, the universe responds instantly, aligning you with relationships, experiences, and destinies that match your healed frequency. Chapter 17. Money as Conscious Energy. In a bustling market city where merchants bartered with animated voices and gold coins chimed like tiny bells, lived a woman named Irene. Her hands were steady, her work meticulous, and her intentions pure. She crafted exquisite pottery bowls that gleamed like moonlit water and vases shaped with the grace of ancient rivers. Yet, despite her talent, Irene lived in constant fear of money. She clutched each coin tightly, spending only when necessary, counting every copper piece with nervous precision. When she received payment, anxiety knotted her stomach. When she made a sale, guilt whispered that the buyer's generosity was too much. When she paid for supplies, panic stirred, as if the universe kept score. The truth she did not yet understand was this: her relationship with money was not financial, it was energetic. Money, like all things, responds to the vibration of the one who interacts with it. Irene's vibration was contraction, her posture was fear, her belief was scarcity. So though money visited her, it never stayed long. It flowed in, then rushed out, mirroring the turbulence she felt around it. One afternoon, after a particularly difficult day of business, Irene wandered to the outskirts of the city where the sacred river flowed. She often came here to quiet her mind, but today something felt different. The air hummed subtly. The river shimmered with unusual brilliance. As she approached the water's edge, she noticed a woman sitting on a smooth boulder, a woman with hair like flowing silver and eyes glistening with the memory of distant worlds. "Sit," the woman said softly, without turning. Her voice held the warmth of ancient understanding. Irene obeyed, feeling strangely comforted. The woman dipped her fingers into the river. "Tell me, what is your relationship with this?" Irene blinked. "With the river?" "Yes." The woman smiled. "What does this water mean to you?" Irene considered. "It nourishes life. It cleanses. It refreshes. It flows without hesitation." The woman nodded. "And does it judge itself?" "No." "Does it fear giving too much?" she asked. Irene shook her head. "Does it withhold itself out of anxiety?" "No." "Then why?" The woman said gently. "Do you treat money as something different from this river?" Irene stared at the water, stunned by the simplicity of the question. The woman continued, "Money is energy. It is flow. It is exchange. It has no morality, no intention, no agenda. It simply reflects the consciousness of the one who interacts with it." She cupped her hands and lifted a pool of water. "This water does not diminish when shared. It spilled back into the river effortlessly. It returns in new forms: rain, mist, stream." Irene swallowed. I'm afraid of losing money." The woman placed her wet hands over Irene's. "You cannot lose what is part of you. Money responds to your belief. When you fear it, you constrict the flow. When you honor it, you open the channels of abundance." Irene exhaled shakily. "But every time I spend, I feel like something leaves me." "That," the woman said gently, "is your misunderstanding." She tapped Irene's chest lightly. "Prosperity is not measured by how much you keep, but by how freely you allow energy to circulate." The woman reached into a small pouch and pulled out 2 river stones, one smooth and rounded, the other rough and jagged. "Look," she said, placing the stones on the ground between them. "This smooth stone has spent years being carried by the river. It has been touched, moved, exchanged, and returned. It is polished by motion." She picked up the jagged one. "This stone hides in a cave. It avoids movement. It avoids flow. It avoids circulation. It stays untouched, unshared, unseen, and thus remains sharp, uncomfortable, rigid. She held the stones up. Your relationship with money chooses which stone you become. Irene felt the truth vibrate through her. The woman continued, when you clutch money with fear, you become the jagged stone, rigid, closed, untouched by flow. But when you approach money as conscious energy with appreciation, trust, and openness, you become smooth, fluid, aligned. She leaned closer, voice warm. Money responds to emotional frequency, not effort. Then, what frequency does money respond best to? Irene asked. The woman smiled. Gratitude, receptivity, circulation, and trust. She scooped another handful of water. Money is like this, always seeking to move, always seeking to nourish. If you resist its movement, it retreats. If you honor its nature, it returns with greater abundance. Irene listened with trembling breath. So, how do I change my relationship with it? The woman extended her arm toward the flowing river. Do as the river does. Flow, circulate, move with ease. She guided Irene's hand to touch the water. Say this, she whispered. Circulation equals trust. Irene repeated the words, soft at first, then with deeper resonance. Again, the woman said, circulation equals trust. Irene felt something loosen inside her, a knot she didn't know she had been carrying her entire life. As she repeated the affirmation, the river shimmered brighter, as if acknowledging her shift. The woman stood, brushing water from her palms. From this day forward, treat money as conscious energy. Receive it with openness. Spend it with appreciation. Let it move through your life, like the river moves through this valley. Irene rose slowly. How will I know it's working? The woman smiled with quiet certainty. Your anxiety will soften. Your opportunities will expand. And abundance will begin arriving through channels you never expected. Before Irene could speak again, a gust of wind swept across the riverbank, and the woman vanished into shimmering light. Irene stepped forward, heart thundering, breath steady, and for the first time, she felt money was not leaving her. Money was flowing with her. Money was responding to her. She whispered into the wind, I am part of the flow. I trust the flow. I circulate the flow. And the universe, ever faithful to frequency, began to respond. Chapter 18. Relationships as Resonance. In a vibrant town filled with music, laughter, and winding cobblestone streets, lived a man named Milton, who had spent most of his life searching for the right relationships: romantic, platonic, professional, spiritual. He sought compatibility. He sought connection. He sought companionship. And yet, despite his efforts, Milton always found himself repeating the same painful patterns. He would attract partners who were distant, friends who were unreliable, and co-workers who mirrored his insecurities. No matter how different the people appeared at first, they always revealed traits that left Milton feeling unseen, unsupported, and unvalued. One evening, after a particularly disappointing encounter, Milton walked alone to a hill overlooking the city. Lanterns flickered in the streets below, like scattered stars. He sank onto a bench beneath an old tree. Why, he whispered, do I always attract the same people? A voice answered from behind him. Because you meet only the versions of others that match the version of yourself you have been living. Milton startled and turned. An elderly watchmaker stood there, holding a small brass gear in his hand. His eyes were bright with understanding. Who are you? Milton asked. A keeper of rhythms, the man said. One who understands resonance. He sat beside Milton and held up the brass gear. Do you know how clocks keep time? Milton shrugged. Mechanisms, I suppose. Yes, the watchmaker nodded. But more precisely, resonance. Every part vibrates in harmony with every other part. If even one gear falls out of rhythm, the entire structure falters. He placed the gear on Milton's palm. People are like gears in an energetic clock. You attract those who resonate with the vibration you emit. Milton frowned. What vibration am I emitting? The watchmaker gestured to Milton's chest. The one you carry here, the one you try to hide even from yourself. Milton's eyes burned. And what vibration is that? A vibration of unworthiness, the watchmaker said gently. A frequency of self-doubt. A resonance of, I must prove myself. And so, the world brings you people who echo those beliefs back to you. Milton swallowed hard. But I want loyal, supportive, loving people in my life. The watchmaker nodded kindly. Of course you do. But you do not vibrate loyalty, support, or love toward yourself. You desire what you do not yet embody. And so, what you attract mirrors who you are not, who you wish to be. He reached into his coat and pulled out 2 tuning forks. He struck one. Its vibration hummed in the air, a pure, steady tone. Seconds later, without being touched, the second tuning fork began to vibrate at the same frequency. Do you see? The watchmaker said. This is resonance. Nothing touches the second fork, yet it responds purely to the vibration of the first. Milton watched in awe. This, the watchmaker continued, is how relationships operate. You do not attract by effort, appearance, or intention. You attract by resonance. Milton stared at the tuning forks. So the people I draw into my life reflect me? The watchmaker nodded. They reflect your frequency, your beliefs about yourself, your unresolved pain, your hidden wounds, and yes, your light, once you remember it. He placed the forks in Milton's hands. You have been choosing relationships based on surface traits, kindness, beauty, compatibility. But the universe chooses relationships based on vibration. A breeze rustled the branches overhead as Milton absorbed this truth. So, Milton whispered, to attract different people, I have to become different myself. The watchmaker smiled. Not different. Truer. He gestured toward the city below. You are not broken. You are unmatched. Your heart beats a rhythm you have not yet heard clearly. When you refine that rhythm, when you embody self-love, boundaries, worthiness, those who match your new frequency will appear effortlessly. Milton felt a mixture of hope and fear. How do I refine my frequency? The watchmaker reached into his pocket and pulled out a small journal. Write yourself a love letter, he said. Not a fantasy, not flattery. Write to yourself from the perspective of the partner, friend, or ally you long for. Milton frowned. Why? Because, the watchmaker whispered, you must become the vibration of what you wish to receive. He handed the journal to Milton. When you write this letter, you tune yourself like a tuning fork to the frequency of true connection. Milton hesitated. And when I change my frequency, the wrong people disappear? The watchmaker nodded. And the right ones appear. Not because you chase them, but because resonance makes connection inevitable. Milton looked at the old man with gratitude. Thank you. I think I understand. The watchmaker stood, the moonlight illuminating his silhouette. One final truth, he said, his voice warm and steady. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you are willing to believe you deserve. Milton stared at the tuning forks in his hands, feeling something shift inside, a soft awakening, a quiet recognition. As he walked home under the moonlit sky, he whispered, I tune myself to love. I tune myself to worthiness. I tune myself to aligned connection. And somewhere in the unseen currents of the universe, frequencies rearrange themselves in response. Chapter 19. The Dimmer Switch of Belief. In a quiet seaside town, where gulls cried over rolling waves, and morning light painted gold across worn wooden docks, lived a woman named Pearl. She owned a small bakery on the corner of Willow Street, a cozy shop where the aroma of cinnamon rolls and freshly baked bread drifted into the air like a warm embrace. Pearl had a heart full of dreams. She envisioned her bakery filled with locals and travelers, conversations bubbling like warm soup, laughter echoing off the walls. She imagined expansion, perhaps a second shop, or a larger kitchen, or a team that felt like family. But although her intentions were pure and her work ethic strong, her life operated like a flickering lantern. Some mornings she awakened with bright certainty, a belief that everything was possible. And those days, customers poured in, opportunities appeared, ideas flowed with elegant clarity. But on other mornings, clouds of doubt shadowed her spirit. She'd question her worth. She'd fear failure. She'd anticipate loss. On those days, her bakery sat empty, supplies spoiled, ideas withered. Pearl began to feel as though her life was conspiring against her. Bright one day, dim the next. Yet the universe was not inconsistent. It was responding to her belief, which flickered like a dimmer switch turning up and down. One foggy morning, after a particularly discouraging week, Pearl closed the shop early and wandered to the sea. Waves rolled in slow, gentle breaths. A lighthouse stood on a cliff's edge, its beams sweeping the ocean with steady rhythm. She found herself drawn to it. Inside, an elderly lighthouse keeper named Rowan polished the lantern's glass. His movements were calm, intentional, unhurried. The steadiness of his presence felt like an anchor against the shifting tides of Pearl's heart. "What brings you here?" Rowan asked without turning. Pearl sighed. "My life. It feels unpredictable. Some days everything flows. Other days it collapses. I'm beginning to think I'm cursed with inconsistency." Rowan chuckled softly. "No one is cursed with inconsistency. They're simply unaware of their dimmer." "My dimmer?" Rowan wiped the glass, revealing a glowing flame within. "Belief," he said. "Your belief is your dimmer switch. When you brighten it, life reflects your radiance. When you dim it, life grows quiet." Pearl frowned. "But I believe in my dreams." "Sometimes," Rowan said gently. "And other times, you believe in your fears." He motioned for her to follow him up the lighthouse stairs. The spiral path echoed with her footsteps, each step illuminated by the lantern glow. "When sailors look for this lighthouse," he said, "they depend on the steadiness of its beam. A flickering light misleads them. A dim beam endangers them. A bright, unwavering light that guides them home." Pearl gazed at the sweeping light that reached over the ocean, in strong, rhythmic arcs. "Belief," Rowan continued, "must be tended like this flame, not overly fired with bursts of passion that burn out, not neglected so it dwindles, but kept steady." Pearl sank onto a wooden bench. "I don't know how to keep my belief steady." Rowan sat beside her. "Let me tell you a story," he began. "Long ago, there were two lighthouse keepers. The first kept his lamp blazing with intense energy. He polished the glass obsessively, adjusted the mechanisms constantly, panicked at every flicker. Some nights, the light shone brilliantly. Other nights, it sputtered and died from overhandling. The second lighthouse keeper tended his flame with gentle consistency. He trimmed the wick daily, cleaned the glass when needed, ensured steady oil flow. His flame was modest but unwavering. During storms, sailors sought the second keeper's light, not because it was the brightest, but because it was the most reliable. Consistency saves. Inconsistency confuses. Pearl looked out at the sea, a lump forming in her throat. "So, my inconsistent belief confuses the universe?" "Not confuses," Rowan corrected softly. "Reflects. The universe reflects exactly what you hold. When your belief wavers, it mirrors the wavering. When it stabilizes, it reflects stability." He picked up the oil can and filled the reservoir beneath the lantern. "Your work is not to burn brightly. Your work is to burn steadily." Pearl stared at the flame, understanding beginning to dawn. "And how do I do that?" "You adjust your dimmer," Rowan said. "Not by force, but by awareness." He handed her a small brass dial that controlled the lantern's brightness. "Notice when your belief dims," he said. "Don't punish it. Don't fear it. Simply adjust gently back toward faith. And if doubt returns, adjust again. This is the quiet discipline of inner mastery. Not dramatic leaps of belief, but the soft returning, again and again. Pearl felt tears fill her eyes. So I'm not failing. I'm flickering. Rowan smiled warmly. Exactly. And flickers can be steadied. He placed a hand over her heart. Life does not require perfect belief, he said. Only tended belief. As Pearl left the lighthouse, something inside her felt different. Not a burst of confidence, but a steadying, a quieting, a recognition that belief was not a lightning strike, but a lantern flame she could nurture daily. The next morning, instead of seeking overwhelming motivation, Pearl simply tended her inner flame with gentle certainty, and in that consistency, life miraculously responded. Customers returned. Opportunities flowed. Her energy aligned. Because the universe had not changed, her dimmer had. Chapter 20. The Spacious Now. In a bustling marketplace where merchants called out in melodic bursts and children laughed between winding stalls, lived a man named Floyd. To the world he looked successful, always rushing, always planning, always achieving. His days were filled with tasks, goals, visions, and deadlines. But inside, Floyd felt perpetually behind. His mind lived in tomorrow. His heart longed for yesterday, and the present moment, shimmering, fertile, alive, slipped through his fingers like sand. He believed that joy waited at the end of his accomplishments. He believed that peace lived somewhere in the future. He believed life would finally open for him once he got there. But he never arrived, because there kept moving ahead of him. One evening, after running himself breathless through crowded streets, Floyd collapsed beneath a fig tree at the edge of the marketplace. His chest heaved, his mind buzzed, his entire being trembled with exhaustion. That's when he heard the sound of soft humming. An elderly gardener knelt nearby, trimming the fig tree with slow, deliberate movements. She hummed as if time itself danced with her. "You are far from yourself," she said without looking up. Floyd frowned. "What does that mean?" She clipped another branch. "You live everywhere, except the only moment that exists." He stared blankly. She pointed to the ground. "Here, now, this breath, this heartbeat." Floyd sighed heavily. "I'm just trying to get ahead." "And so," she said, "you stay behind." He blinked. "What?" She wiped soil from her hands and motioned for him to sit beside her roots. "You run through life as though the future holds your salvation," she said. "But the future does not exist. It is an idea, a projection, a mirage." Floyd rubbed his temples. "But I have plans, goals. I need to think ahead." "Plans are fine," the gardener said gently. "But you confuse planning with living. You confuse preparation with presence." He looked down, shame rising. "I don't know how to slow down." "You were never meant to slow down," she whispered. "You were meant to arrive." Floyd swallowed. "Arrive where?" "Here," she said simply. She dug her fingers into the soil. "Let me tell you a story. There once was a gardener who tended 2 plots of land. The first plot she watered daily, but ran through quickly, thinking always of the next task. She barely noticed the soil beneath her feet, the warmth of the sun, the scent of the blossoms she nurtured. Her plants grew weak, not from lack of water, but from lack of presence. Her second plot she approached slowly. She touched each leaf as if greeting an old friend. She breathed with the breeze. She felt the earth. Her attention was a gentle blessing. The second plot flourished beyond expectation. Flowers bursting with color, fruits heavy with sweetness. Visitors marveled at her talent. But the gardener smiled and said, "The difference was not the land, but the presence I brought to it." Floyd exhaled, a long, trembling release. "I can't remember the last time I felt present," he admitted. The gardener brushed her hand across the fig tree bark. "Presence is not an achievement. It is a return to the spacious now." Floyd tilted his head. The spacious now? Yes, she said. The now is not a point in time. It is a field, a vast, open landscape of consciousness. Everything you want, clarity, power, creation, synchronicity, grows from here. She picked up a dried leaf from the ground. When you live ahead of yourself, she said, you live in scarcity because you are always reaching. When you live behind yourself, you live in regret because you are always replaying. She opened her palm, letting the leaf fall. But when you live with yourself fully, you enter the field of abundance, because the present moment is where creation responds. Floyd felt warmth rising in his chest. How do I get into the spacious now? He whispered. The gardener smiled softly. You don't get into it. You stop leaving it. She guided him through a simple practice. Breathe, she said. Not to control your breath, but to notice it. Floyd inhaled. Now feel your feet on the earth. Not to ground yourself, but to remember you are here. He obeyed. Now place your hand on your heart. Not to force peace, but to acknowledge your existence. As Floyd breathed, something extraordinary happened. The marketplace sounds softened. Time slowed. A profound stillness expanded inside him. It felt like stepping into a vast, silent cathedral, where every thought, every breath, every sensation echoed with meaning. This, the gardener whispered, is the spacious now, where your power lives, where your clarity awaits, where your manifestations are born. Floyd's eyes brimmed with tears. I've been chasing life, and life, she said gently, has been waiting for you to stop running. He closed his eyes, letting presence deepen further. For the first time in years he arrived. He didn't achieve anything. He didn't complete anything. He didn't fix anything. He simply was. And in that simple beingness, Floyd felt more alive, more aligned, more whole than any accomplishment had ever made him feel. When he opened his eyes, the gardener had already returned to her tending, humming softly again. Floyd whispered, "Only this moment is real. Let it be. Enough." And the universe, as it always does, responded with a shift, subtle but unmistakable. His life, once frantic, began to open with ease. Because he had learned the truth. The future blooms from the spacious now, and when you inhabit it fully, life meets you here. Chapter 21. Consciousness creating itself. In a quiet, sunlit room high atop a hill, where morning light streamed through stained glass windows, like liquid gold, a young woman named Winnie sat surrounded by vision boards, journals, and affirmations carefully taped to the walls. She had tried every manifestation technique she could find. She visualized with precision. She spoke affirmations with confidence. She wrote her desires dozens of times in looping script, yet something felt incomplete. Her manifestations came slowly, unevenly, or not at all. She sensed a deeper truth existed beyond the surface-level techniques, a truth she could feel but not name. One afternoon, as sunlight poured across her floor in shimmering patterns, she whispered the question that had lingered inside her for years. Who exactly is doing the manifesting? Her mind fell silent. Was it her, the person sitting in the room? Was it her intentions, her thoughts, her essence, the universe? Something beyond all of these? The question opened, something inside her, a quiet doorway, and in that openness, she felt a pull, an urge to wander outside. As she stepped through her doorway, she noticed an elderly man sitting on a stone bench near the hill's edge. He wore simple robes, the color of desert sand, and held a small candle in his hands. He looked up and smiled, as though he'd been waiting for her. "You've reached the question that begins true creation," he said gently. Winnie blinked. "What question?" He lifted the candle, letting it catch the afternoon light. "The question of who manifests." She sat beside him. "Do you know?" He nodded. "I know the answer, and more. Importantly, I know the illusion that hides it." Winnie leaned in. This was the wisdom she had been missing. The man placed the candle between them. "Tell me," he asked, "when you light a candle from another candle, does the first flame diminish?" Winnie shook her head. "No." "Can you tell where one flame ends and the other begins?" "No." "Because," he said softly, "the flame is not tied to its wick. It is an expression of fire itself." He looked deeply into her eyes. "And so are you." Winnie felt her breath catch. "You believe you are the wick, the separate self, trying to manifest with limited strength. But you are the flame consciousness, expressing itself through this temporary form." He continued, voice filled with ancient calm. "You are not a small self, asking a large universe for favors. You are the universe expressing itself through the appearance of a small self." Winnie felt something shift, as though a veil she hadn't known existed was being gently lifted. The man placed the candle in her hands. "When you desire something," he said, "that desire is not coming from the personality you call you. It is consciousness, recognizing its next expression." She frowned slightly. "I don't understand." He chuckled softly. "Let me tell you a story. In the mountains of the East, a master taught students through silence. One night, he lit a candle in complete darkness. The flame illuminated the room, soft yet powerful. "Observe," the master said. He used the candle to light another. "Has the flame diminished?" "No," the students replied. "And yet," the master said, "you cannot say where the first flame ends and the second begins." He lifted both candles. Their flames danced in perfect union, two expressions of one fire. "This," he whispered, "is consciousness. The universe does not create separate flames. It expresses itself through many wicks." One student raised his hand. "Then, what is the purpose of manifestation?" The master answered with gentle authority. "Manifestation is consciousness remembering itself in form." Winnie stared at her candle, tears forming. "So when I manifest," she whispered, "I'm not asking for something from outside me. I'm allowing something inside me to express." "Precisely," the man nodded. "You are both the painter and the canvas, both the dreamer and the dream, both the ocean and the wave." He placed his hand over hers. "You never needed to convince the universe. You only needed to remember you are it." Winnie exhaled sharply, a release that felt like centuries of misunderstanding dissolving. The man smiled. "When you desire something, it's not coming from lack. It's coming from remembrance. A remembering of what consciousness is ready to express through you next," she whispered. "Then why do some manifestations take so long?" "Because," he said, gently, "you still identify as the wick, not the flame. You still believe you are separate. You still believe you must convince, or attract, or earn." He looked outward toward the golden horizon. "But when you embody the truth that you are consciousness experiencing itself, manifesting its own expansion, creation becomes effortless." Winnie closed her eyes, and something remarkable happened. For the first time in her life, she stopped asking, stopped reaching, stopped striving. Instead, she felt a profound oneness, emerging with something vast and ancient. She felt herself as the space in which all things arise. She felt herself as the witness, the creator, and the creation. She felt herself as the flame, infinite, undiminished, and eternal. When she opened her eyes, the man was gone. Only the candle remained, flame flickering gently. She whispered, "The light and I are one flame." And from that day on, manifestation for Winnie was no longer an act of doing, but an act of remembering. Chapter 22. The Paradox of Effort. Along a bustling harbor where ships drifted lazily on sapphire waters and gulls circled overhead in endless arcs, lived a man named Oscar. He was known for his relentless drive. His days were carved into strict schedules. His nights were spent strategizing for the next dawn. Oscar believed success was the product of effort, force, push, struggle, grind. He lived by the creed, "Nothing comes unless you make it happen." Yet the more he pushed, the more resistance he met. The more he forced, the more life stiffened. The more he strained, the more exhausted and disconnected he felt. Still, he clung to the belief that effort was noble, that struggle was honorable, that intensity was the price of success. But life had other plans. One morning, as Oscar stood on the docks preparing for another day of hurried work, he noticed an elderly sailor adjusting the ropes of a small sailboat. The sailor's movements were slow, gentle, almost effortless. He guided the sails with the familiarity of someone who understood the wind's secrets. Oscar approached him. "You're wasting time," he said. "You need more force on those ropes. Tighten the sails." The sailor chuckled warmly. "Force?" he asked. "You misunderstand the nature of the wind." Oscar raised a brow. "What do you mean?" The sailor motioned for Oscar to step aboard the boat. "Come," he said. "Let me show you." The boat drifted easily from the dock. The sailor adjusted the sails with 2 delicate motions, nothing more. Oscar felt the boat catch the wind and surge forward smoothly. The sailor turned to him. "Do you feel that?" Oscar nodded. "Yes, it's moving fast." "And yet," the sailor said, "I barely touched the ropes." Oscar frowned. "How?" The sailor looked out at the shimmering water. "There is a paradox you haven't understood," he said. "The universe responds not to force, but to alignment." Oscar crossed his arms. "Alignment doesn't get results. Effort does." The sailor smiled. "Let me tell you a story. There were 2 captains who wished to cross the same sea. The first captain relied on muscle and willpower. He ordered his men to row day and night, pushing them through exhaustion. The men strained, the wood groaned, and the ship moved slowly, fighting the waves at every turn. The second captain studied the wind, the currents, and the tides. He raised his sails at the right moments, adjusted their angle with calm precision, and allowed the elements to support him. By the end of the journey, the second captain arrived not only sooner, but refreshed, joyful, and deeply connected to the sea. The first captain arrived bitter and depleted, believing the journey had been against him. But the sea had not opposed either captain. It merely responded to their chosen relationship with effort. Oscar stared at the sailor, the message sinking in. "You see," the sailor continued, "effort is not wrong, but effort without alignment becomes struggle. Effort with alignment becomes ease." He pulled gently at a rope. The sail shifted. The boat responded instantly. "The wind," he said, "is always here, ready to carry you. But if you insist on rowing, the journey becomes harder than it needs to be." Oscar looked down at his hands, calloused from years of metaphorical rowing. "What do I do?" he asked softly. The sailor touched his shoulder. "You stop forcing and start listening. You stop gripping and start sensing. You stop pushing life and allow life to carry you." Oscar swallowed, his voice trembling. "But if I stop forcing, won't everything fall apart?" The sailor shook his head gently. "No. When you stop forcing, everything finally falls into place." He pointed to the open sea. "Life is not a test of strength. It is a dance with universal intelligence. You cannot bully the wind. You can only partner with it." Oscar felt a profound truth rising inside him, one he had drowned beneath his obsession with control. The sailor continued. "Force closes doors. Alignment opens them. Force exhausts. Alignment energizes. Force blinds. Alignment reveals." For the first time in years, Oscar exhaled deeply, a breath that released something heavy he'd carried far too long. "What should I do now?" he asked. "Begin here," the sailor said. "Each time you feel yourself tightening, ask, 'What if I trusted the wind?' Let the question soften you. Let it redirect you. Let it remind you that the universe is not moved by strain, but by clarity." As the boat glided back to shore, Oscar felt lighter, freer, more open. The harbor looked different, not because it had changed, but because he had. The sailor smiled. stepping onto the dock. "Remember," he said, "you were never meant to row your way through existence. You were meant to sail." Oscar whispered the words to himself. What if I trusted the wind? The question felt like the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter where effort was no longer a weapon, but a partnership with the universe. And life, hearing the soft shift inside him, began at once to respond.